In less than a year, high school seniors Ethan Carter and Alyssa Hart transitioned from being the golden couple everyone admired to the heart of a tragic story. Ethan Carter grew up in Denton, Texas, a suburban town known for its close-knit community and thriving arts scene. The Carters were a tight-knit family, fostering an environment filled with love and encouragement. Ethan, the middle child, was often described as quiet and introspective, the kind of kid who preferred spending hours immersed in books or playing melancholic melodies on his piano. His family affectionately referred to him as the old soul of the house. Despite his reserved nature, Ethan joined the middle school soccer team at the urging of his father, who believed team sports would help him break out of his shell. While he lacked the fiery competitiveness of his peers, Ethan's calm demeanor and dedication earned him a spot as the team's goalkeeper. It was on the soccer field that he first found a sense of belonging. Yet behind Ethan's successes lay a persistent undercurrent of anxiety and self-doubt. Social situations, particularly large gatherings or public speaking, left him paralyzed with fear. He often worried that he wasn't enough, not smart enough, not talented enough, not confident enough. These insecurities shadowed him into high school, where, despite maintaining top grades, he often felt invisible among his more extroverted classmates. Alyssa Hart, on the other hand, couldn't have been more different. Born and raised in Denton as well, Alyssa was the kind of girl who seemed to radiate confidence and charisma wherever she went. As the captain of her high school volleyball team, she was a natural leader, inspiring her teammates with both her determination and her infectious positivity. Her laugh was the kind you could hear from across the room, a hearty, unrestrained sound that instantly made people smile. Alyssa was also deeply driven. She dreamed of earning a volleyball scholarship to a prestigious university and spent countless hours perfecting her spikes and serves. But beneath her competitive edge was a heart of gold. Alyssa volunteered at a local shelter every weekend and was fiercely protective of her younger brother, often helping him with homework and cheering him on at his Little League games. When Ethan and Alyssa began dating in the fall of 2021, it seemed like an unlikely pairing to some. He, the reserved bookworm, and she, the vivacious athlete. But their connection was undeniable. Ethan was captivated by Alyssa's energy and zest for life, while she admired his thoughtfulness and depth. Their relationship quickly became the talk of the school. Friends and family alike were delighted by the way Alyssa brought Ethan out of his shell, encouraging him to attend more social events and try new experiences. Meanwhile, Ethan's steady and calming presence provided Alyssa with a safe haven amid the whirlwind of her busy schedule. For a time, they were inseparable. They spent weekends exploring local coffee shops and hiking trails, sharing dreams about their futures. Ethan loved composing piano pieces inspired by Alyssa, while she would text him silly photos from volleyball practice, always finding ways to make him laugh. At first glance, they seemed like the perfect match, a couple destined to thrive. But as the months passed, subtle cracks began to form in their seemingly idyllic relationship. Beneath the surface, Ethan's insecurities grew, and Alyssa's high-energy lifestyle started to clash with his quieter nature. What began as a heartwarming story of opposites attracting would soon unravel into a tale of heartbreak and tragedy. For the first few months, Ethan and Alyssa's relationship seemed picture perfect. They were inseparable, spending long evenings discussing their dreams for the future. Ethan often shared his desire to study music composition, envisioning a life where he could create symphonies that would resonate with the world. Alyssa, meanwhile, spoke passionately about her goal of playing volleyball at the collegiate level, visualizing herself leading her team to victory on the national stage. They supported each other's aspirations, with Alyssa attending Ethan's piano recitals and Ethan cheering from the bleachers at her volleyball games. But as the spring of 2022 rolled around, the pressures of senior year began to weigh on them both, and subtle cracks started to appear in their relationship. Ethan, who had always battled bouts of anxiety and self-doubt, found himself overwhelmed by the looming decisions about college and his future. His once calming presence became more erratic, and his insecurities, which he had managed to keep in check, started to bubble to the surface. Alyssa, accustomed to her own fast-paced and ambitious lifestyle, began to notice changes in Ethan. He leaned on her more heavily for emotional support, seeking constant reassurance about their relationship and his worth. At first, she tried to be understanding, comforting him with words of encouragement and reminding him of his talent and potential. But over time, Ethan's dependency grew, and Alyssa started to feel the strain. "I feel like I'm his entire world, and I can't handle that pressure," she confided to her best friend, Mia, during a late-night phone call. "I love him, but I feel like I'm losing myself trying to keep him together." Alyssa began to pull away, trying to carve out space for herself amid the demands of her busy schedule. She threw herself into volleyball, spending extra hours practicing, and surrounded herself with friends who helped her feel lighter and more carefree. Ethan, on the other hand, interpreted her growing distance as rejection. His texts became more frequent and urgent, often asking why she wasn't responding or who she was spending time with. By early June, Alyssa felt emotionally drained. She realized she could no longer be the sole source of Ethan's stability and happiness. One evening, after much deliberation, she told him she thought it was best if they broke up. "I just think we both need some space to figure ourselves out," she said gently, trying to soften the blow. To Alyssa, the decision felt necessary, a step toward regaining her own sense of identity and independence. But to Ethan, it was devastating. He felt as though the foundation of his world had been ripped away. He replayed their final conversation over and over in his head, each word cutting deeper. Ethan's struggles with depression intensified in the days that followed. He isolated himself from his friends and family, spending hours alone in his room. The piano that once brought him solace now stood untouched in the corner. When his parents encouraged him to focus on the future and assured him that heartbreak was a normal part of growing up, he dismissed their words, convinced that no one understood the depth of his pain. As summer unfolded, Ethan's heartbreak turned into fixation. He began following Alyssa's social media profiles obsessively, trying to piece together her life without him. He created anonymous accounts to watch her posts and even showed up at places she frequented, hoping for a chance to see her. Alyssa, who had initially hoped the breakup would bring them both clarity and healing, began to feel uneasy, sensing that Ethan's behavior was becoming increasingly erratic. What had started as a romance filled with joy and promise was now unraveling into a dark and unsettling dynamic, one that neither of them fully understood, but would soon spiral out of control. In the aftermath of the breakup, Ethan Carter's world seemed to collapse. What had once been a structured life of school, soccer, and music quickly disintegrated. He stopped showing up to soccer practices, ignoring the concerned calls and texts from his teammates. His grades, which had always been stellar, began to slip as he found it increasingly difficult to focus. Ethan would spend hours in his room, staring at his phone, fixating on Alyssa's social media posts, and scrolling through their old conversations. At first, Ethan's messages to Alyssa were heartfelt and pleading. He apologized profusely, begged for another chance, and told her he couldn't imagine life without her. But as days turned into weeks, the tone of his messages grew darker and more erratic. He sent long, rambling paragraphs late at night, expressing his pain and accusing her of abandoning him. When Alyssa didn't respond, Ethan created anonymous social media accounts to monitor her activity, desperate to know where she was and who she was with. Alyssa, initially empathetic, tried to respond calmly, hoping to de-escalate the situation. "Ethan, I'm sorry you're feeling this way, but I think it's best for both of us to have space," she wrote in one of her final replies. But her attempts to set boundaries only seemed to intensify his obsession. By early July, Alyssa began to feel uneasy. She noticed Ethan's car parked near places she frequented: her favorite coffee shop, the volleyball gym, even her church. One evening, she came home from practice to find a handwritten letter tucked into her mailbox. The letter was filled with fragmented thoughts, ranging from love confessions to veiled threats. That night, Alyssa confided in her mother. "I don't think he's okay, Mom," she said, her voice trembling. Alarmed, Alyssa's mother started accompanying her to and from school, a precaution Alyssa initially found embarrassing, but soon appreciated. Ethan's behavior had crossed a line, and her mother urged her to keep a record of his messages and unusual behavior in case they needed to seek legal intervention. Meanwhile, Ethan's parents were grappling with their own concerns. They had noticed their son's withdrawal and erratic moods, but had underestimated the depth of his despair. After being contacted by Alyssa's mother about the letter and his behavior, they confronted Ethan. His tearful confession about how much he missed Alyssa prompted them to seek professional help. Ethan began seeing a therapist and was prescribed medication for his depression. For a brief moment, there was hope. But Ethan quickly stopped taking the pills, complaining of severe headaches and nausea. His sessions with the therapist became less frequent, and soon he stopped going altogether. On the night of July 15th, Ethan sent Alyssa a chilling text message. "You were my everything. Without you, there's no point." The words sent a shiver down Alyssa's spine. She showed the message to her mother, who immediately called Ethan's parents. Ethan's father found him in his room, barely conscious, with an empty bottle of pills on his bedside table. The sight was a parent's worst nightmare. They called 911, and Ethan was rushed to the hospital. He survived, but the overdose left him physically weakened and emotionally fragile. He spent the next week in the hospital's psychiatric ward, where doctors closely monitored his condition. Despite his physical recovery, Ethan's mental health continued to deteriorate. He refused to return to soccer or school, instead spending his days lying in bed or pacing the house. His once bright eyes were now shadowed and hollow, and he spoke in fragmented, despondent sentences. His parents, now acutely aware of the severity of his struggles, felt helpless, unsure of how to reach the boy they once knew. Alyssa, though relieved that Ethan had survived, was shaken to her core. She couldn't shake the guilt, even though she knew deep down that she wasn't responsible for his actions. She grew more cautious, avoiding places where she thought Ethan might show up, and leaning heavily on her friends and family for support. What had started as a high school romance had now spiraled into a harrowing ordeal, leaving everyone involved walking on eggshells, unsure of what might come next. The tension was palpable, like a storm brewing on the horizon, ready to break at any moment. The afternoon of August 12th, 2022, began like any other summer day, warm and sunny, with a slight breeze. Alyssa and her best friend Mia had spent the morning lounging by the pool, enjoying the last days of freedom before senior year began. Around lunchtime, they decided to grab a bite at a small diner they both loved, a quaint spot known for its milkshakes and friendly atmosphere. As they drove to the diner, Alyssa couldn't shake a gnawing feeling of unease. "I don't know, Mia," she said, gripping the steering wheel tighter than usual. "I feel like Ethan's everywhere lately. What if he shows up?" Mia, ever the optimist, brushed it off. "You're overthinking it. He's probably at home sulking like he always is." Alyssa nodded, but her stomach churned. By 2:15 p.m., the girls were seated in a corner booth, scrolling through the menu and chatting about the upcoming volleyball season. But Alyssa's sense of dread lingered, and she found herself glancing toward the door every time it opened. Her worst fears were realized at 2:30, when Ethan walked in. Alyssa froze as Ethan entered the diner and scanned the room, quickly spotting her. His expression was a mix of sadness, anger, and an unsettling intensity. He approached the table slowly, his presence casting a heavy shadow over the once lively diner. The tension escalated as Ethan stood at the table, his focus solely on Alyssa. Sensing danger, Alyssa discreetly texted her mother, alerting her to Ethan's presence and asking for help. Moments later, Ethan abruptly left the diner, providing a brief moment of relief for Alyssa and her friend Mia. However, that relief was short-lived. Within 5 minutes, Ethan returned, this time carrying a knife retrieved from his truck. His demeanor was increasingly erratic, his eyes wild and unfocused. Recognizing the imminent danger, Alyssa and Mia quickly decided to leave. As they exited the diner and walked toward Alyssa's car, the summer sun offered no comfort, overshadowed by the tension that followed them. Suddenly, hurried footsteps closed in behind them. Ethan charged at Alyssa, tackling her to the ground with enough force to knock the wind out of her. Before she could react, he began stabbing her with the knife, causing severe injuries to her side. Alyssa's screams echoed through the parking lot as Ethan continued his frenzied attack. Mia attempted to intervene, grabbing Ethan's arm in desperation, but he shoved her aside with surprising strength, leaving her dazed on the pavement. Alyssa's mother arrived just as the attack unfolded, leaping out of her car and screaming for help. Before she could reach them, a passerby, 25-year-old Ryan Delgado, saw the commotion and ran to intervene. Ryan, a former college football player, tackled Ethan, knocking him off Alyssa. Although the knife clattered to the ground, Ethan quickly retrieved it and lashed out at Ryan, slashing his arm deeply enough to cause significant blood loss. Despite his injury, Ryan managed to pin Ethan to the ground. Realizing he was overpowered, Ethan ceased his struggle In a chilling and sudden act, he turned the knife on himself, slashing his throat in a desperate attempt to end his life. Ryan wrestled the knife away and applied pressure to Ethan's neck to stem the bleeding until first responders arrived. The scene was chaotic as emergency personnel assessed the situation. Alyssa was lying on the ground, covered in blood and critically injured. Ryan, cradling his severely wounded arm, remained focused on stabilizing Ethan. Mia stood nearby, shaken and sobbing as the aftermath of the attack unfolded. Alyssa was rushed to the hospital with life-threatening injuries, including stab wounds that caused partial paralysis. Ethan, barely clinging to life, was transported to another hospital under police custody. Ryan received emergency treatment for his injuries, which left him with lasting nerve damage but earned him recognition as a hero for his courageous actions. The violent attack shattered what was once perceived as a promising love story. The community was left reeling, struggling to comprehend the tragedy and the scars it left behind. Lives were forever changed in those harrowing moments, and the repercussions would resonate for years to come. The scene at the hospital that night was chaotic, filled with fear and uncertainty. Alyssa was rushed into emergency surgery to address the multiple stab wounds that had left her critically injured. The most concerning injury was a deep wound near her spine, which doctors feared might result in permanent paralysis. Her family, gathered in the waiting room, prayed silently as the hours dragged on. Alyssa's mother, who had witnessed the attack, was inconsolable, replaying the horrifying scene in her mind. Ryan Delgado, the passerby who intervened, was treated for a severe stab wound to his arm. Despite his injury, he remained calm, repeatedly asking the paramedics, "How's the girl? Is she okay?" His selflessness and quick thinking undoubtedly saved Alyssa's life, and word of his bravery spread quickly through the community. Meanwhile, Ethan Carter was stabilized at another hospital under police custody. Though his self-inflicted injuries were serious, they were not life-threatening. As news of the attack spread, many struggled to reconcile the image of the quiet, sensitive boy they once knew with the violence of his actions. In the days following the attack, Alyssa's family issued a heartfelt statement thanking the community for their overwhelming support and praising Ryan as a true hero. "We cannot express enough gratitude to Ryan Delgado," the statement read. "He put his own life on the line to save Alyssa, and we will forever be indebted to him." Alyssa's recovery was grueling from the start. She underwent multiple surgeries to repair the damage to her back, arms, and spine. Doctors worked tirelessly, but the partial paralysis she had sustained meant she would need extensive physical therapy to regain mobility, if that was even possible. Despite the pain and uncertainty, Alyssa displayed remarkable strength, vowing to fight her way back to health. The attack sent shockwaves through the town of Denton. It became a rallying point for discussions about mental health, relationship violence, and the importance of recognizing early warning signs. Vigils were held for Alyssa, with hundreds of community members showing up to light candles and offer their support. Alyssa's story gained national attention, sparking conversations online and in schools about the dangers of obsessive and controlling behavior in relationships. The hashtag #AlyssaStrong began trending, symbolizing her resilience and determination. A fundraiser organized by friends and family quickly surpassed its goal, providing much-needed support for Alyssa's mounting medical expenses. Meanwhile, Ethan faced multiple charges, including 2 counts of attempted murder and aggravated assault. His defense team focused on his struggles with mental health, claiming that untreated depression and trauma had driven him to commit the attack. They highlighted his history of head injuries and argued that these may have impaired his ability to control his emotions. Despite these arguments, the prosecution emphasized the premeditated nature of the attack, pointing to Ethan's stalking behavior, his threatening messages, and the deliberate way he retrieved a weapon before confronting Alyssa. The jury found Ethan guilty on all counts, and he was sentenced to 25 years in prison, followed by mandatory counseling and supervision upon release. Alyssa's family, while relieved by the verdict, found little solace in the legal outcome. "This isn't about punishment," her mother said in a tearful interview. "It's about making sure this never happens to another family." Alyssa's journey has been one of pain and perseverance. The physical scars are a daily reminder of the attack, but it is the emotional scars that have been the hardest to heal. Yet through it all, Alyssa has remained resilient. With the help of dedicated medical professionals, supportive family and friends, and her own unyielding determination, she has made incredible progress. Months after the attack, Alyssa spoke publicly for the first time. Seated in her wheelchair, she addressed a crowd gathered for a local awareness event. "I won't let this define me," she said, her voice steady and strong. "It's a chapter in my story, not the whole book." Today, Alyssa continues to inspire others with her advocacy work. She speaks at schools, sharing her story to educate young people about the signs of toxic relationships and the importance of seeking help. Her message is clear: love should never come at the cost of your safety. The tragic events of August 12th serve as a sobering reminder of the importance of recognizing warning signs and supporting those struggling with mental health issues. While the story of Ethan Carter and Alyssa Hart is one of heartbreak, it is also one of survival and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Don't forget to like and subscribe for daily updates, and check out another jaw-dropping case, where a state trooper murdered his co-worker to hide a secret. Share your thoughts with us in the comments.